All right, so we're now into week 6 of the course, and this week the main topic is examining the social welfare program. And so this is material that comes from the Dolgoff reading, in which Dolgoff lays out a basic framework by which we should be examining social welfare policies. And I use that term very carefully. I noticed that I didn't say analyzing policies, but here we're looking at how to describe a policy to an educated audience. And so the word analysis or analyzing policies has a very specific meaning in the policy realm, and that's not until the second semester that we'll actually cover policy analysis per se. But for our purposes right now, we're trying to be able to understand how a program operates or a policy operates, and then to be able to communicate that understanding to an educated audience. And so we use this Dolgoff framework that's presented in this section. So here's a quick outline of what I intend to cover for this week. And so first, I want to talk about some basic rules that pertain to our projects. Our projects are underway, and so your annotated bibliography is due next week. And so to that end, I wanted to talk a little bit about the formatting that I want you all to use. Many students come into our program having had a background in MLA-style formatting, and so we need to sort of rethink our brains, retrain, rewire ourselves to think now in terms of what APA or the American Psychological Association, what they want us to do in terms of writing our papers. And so I'll devote some time to talking about some basic rules in writing and preparing our papers. And then the second part of this lecture, I'll take a look at that Dolgoff framework. I'll describe to you what the suggestions that Dolgoff is making in the way of examining the characteristics of a program. And so basically, he lays out some basic structural components that you should be examining to be able to describe your selected policy for your projects, spanning eligibility criteria, to benefit structures, to financing, to levels, administration, and goals of a particular program. And then Dolgoff has a set of alternative characteristics that you may look at in examining a social welfare program. And I just select out 3 additional dimensions that I'd like you to look at for your projects. And then finally, there's a brief section on evaluating programs. Like I said, evaluation or analysis is the topic of your second policy class. It's a whole different animal, and so we just give a quick introduction here in the way of evaluating programs, and I provide 2 criteria. These are criteria that are offered by Dolgoff. This is not the standard policy analysis framework. We don't use the standard or these standards in our policy classes, but I go ahead and I'll let you guys think about the adequacy, both horizontal and vertical, of your given policy. Okay? All right, so let me talk first about APA formatting. So by APA, we're referring to the American Psychological Association. These are the rules that we use in the social work field, and so it's important to get an early start on making sure that our papers are formatted in the style that APA suggests. So there are some basic rules that are going to pertain to the different sections of your paper when that becomes due. So there's, of course, the title page, there's an abstract, there's the main body of your text, and of course there's the reference section. The last part is, of course, the bibliography section. I'm going to say that for our paper, your final paper, the group project, I'm not going to require an abstract, so I'm not going to talk about the APA rules pertaining to the abstract. But note that APA does, if we're sticking to the letter of the rules, APA does in fact suggest that you include an abstract, but no need for us to do that. So in terms of the title page, the first section of your paper, so of course on the title page, you're going to go ahead and put the title of your paper. So pretty commonsensical stuff. You're going to center all of this material. You're going to go ahead and put the title of the paper. That's what I'm noting here, right? You're going to go ahead and put the title of the paper, the names of the group members, or the names of the authors, in other words, and then the university affiliation. Go ahead and put the name of the university. This is all centered, right, in the middle of your title page. And so I'm not showing it here, but pretend that we're looking at the title page here, and you go to the top left. If you're at the top left of the title page, that's where your header should be. You should include a header in your title page. And so on the top left corner of your title page, there should be something called a running head, all right, a running header. But the words running head actually appear. So on the top left, you're going to go ahead and put running head with only the word running or the letter R being capitalized. The rest is lowercase. And then right after the words running head, go ahead and put a colon. This is all APA dictated. This is what APA is suggesting. You're going to go ahead and put a colon, and after the colon, you're going to put the title of your paper, an abbreviated title. So that entire top left header, should be no more than 50 characters. And so sometimes your titles may run long. Go ahead and abbreviate that title to put only the most important words from your title into that header. And then, of course, the page numbering also starts on the first page, and that should be on the top right corner of your title page. Okay, so that's the basic. Those are the basic rules for the title page. Now, in terms of the main body, we're going to skip over the abstract. I'm not going to require an abstract, but in terms of the main body of your paper, I'd imagine that you'll probably use three different types of. Well, you'll probably incorporate sources in three different ways. You may use short quotations, right? You may be quoting word for word. In other words, pulling word for word from your source, or you may be pulling a longer quote. And by a longer quote, I'm thinking, or APA is saying 5 sentences or more, right? Where you have 5 sentences or more, that's called a block quote. So you may be using some long quotations. And then the other way to pull in some outside material is to summarize or paraphrase. And so APA has rules pertaining to each of those methods of incorporating outside material. And so first, in the way of a short quotation, in the body of your paper as you're writing up your paper with a short quotation, you're going to quote the source, right? So quotation marks, you're going to go ahead and quote what the source that you want to use, and then end quotations. And then notice there's no punctuation. You're going to use parentheses, and then after the parentheses, you want to make sure you use the last name of the author, or authors in some cases, right? Last name of the author, the year of publication, and then the page number from where that quote comes from. Okay, and so when we cite the page number, we're just going to do a single P. Okay, so students sometimes ask, well, should it be PG or something else? APA says to do a single P, and then parentheses again. And notice that the punctuation comes after the parentheses in the case of a short quotation, right? So the period comes here. Now, a long quotation, we're talking about a block quote, right? Block quote, long quotation, I'm using those terms interchangeably. And so where you have a longer quote, I would advise also, by the way, to use long quotes sparingly. Okay, so your paper shouldn't be filled with long quote after long quote. Short quotations are better, and even better than short quotations would be paraphrasing. Okay, just a side note, but to get back to the point of long quotes or block quotes, with the block quote, you're going to go ahead and pull in the block quote, that is 5 sentences or more, or 5 lines or more here. You're going to indent that block quote. You're going to go ahead and indent it, maintain this line here, this justification, and then after the block quote, notice, unlike this in the case of the short quotation, in the case of the long quotation, you're going to go ahead and punctuate right after the block quote. Immediately after the block quote, you're going to go ahead and put a period there. And then in parentheses, once again, it looks very similar to what we had up here. Last name of the author or authors, the year of publication, and then the page number from which that quote was drawn. So multiple pages, right? If the quote is multiple pages long, which it probably shouldn't be, but if you are going to use multiple pages worth of material to quote, this should be 2 P's, so PP in the case of multiple pages, and then the parentheses. So the last scenario is where you're summarizing or paraphrasing an idea or content from your source. So in the case of summarizing or paraphrasing, you're going to go ahead and put the idea in your own words. You're writing the statement or the idea in your own words, followed by the parentheses, once again, last name of the author and year of publication. Notice that I didn't use the page number. So what the APA guidelines suggest, they say you may go ahead and include the page number, but it doesn't necessarily require you to include the page number, but that's up to the student. I didn't do it here, but like I said, it's the student's decision whether you want to go ahead and include the page number here. Okay? All right, so the last part These are some basic rules that pertain to your reference list, your references, your bibliography. In other words, first point to think about that I note here, there's something called a hanging indent, right? By a hanging indent, what I'm talking about is when you have your list of sources, right? In your reference list, you have your list of sources, and for each individual source, right? So for each source, after the first line, you're going to indent the second line, third line, fourth line, if there is one, fifth line, if there is one. This is within each source that you're citing, right? That's what we mean by hanging indent. You want to make sure that there's that indentation after the first line of each source. And you want to make sure that you're citing, you're using the last name first. Right, go ahead and use the author's last name. Write out the author's last name. And for the author's first and middle name, you're going to use initials. So this is a little bit different from other styles, maybe Chicago style or MLA style. Yeah, you're going to use the last name first and the initials of the author's first and middle names. And then looking sort of globally at the reference list, you want to go ahead and alphabetize the entire list. Yeah, so make sure you put all the sources in order. You're going to maintain double spacing, not in your slides here. This point about maintaining double spacing throughout the entire references list. And so you see examples here, right? Just some common sources that you might use or include in your references list. So first is the journal article, and specifically a peer-reviewed journal article. So notice, imagine that this is actually in your reference list. You have the last name of the author. So author's last name first, and then this is the author's initials of the first and middle name. This is the second author. Once again, last name comes first. You have the author's initial, first name, initial. And unlike other styles, you may, or not may, you must go ahead and put the year of publication immediately after the author's names, right? In parentheses, again, punctuation, you have the period. And notice you have the title. You have the title of the journal article itself. And notice that only the first word is capitalized, right? And so it's just like writing a regular sentence. When you're writing the title of the article, and this is referring to the journal, the name of the journal itself. Excuse me, not the title of the article, but the journal that houses that article. And so I'm not sure if it's entirely evident here, but this is the journal itself is going to be italicized. And the justification for that is that APA says that longer works like journals themselves, books, for example, movies, those things should be italicized, right? So notice that this is italicized, followed by the volume number. The volume number is also italicized. So once again, big things, right? Big things are italicized. That's the volume, but this is the issue number, right? Apparently, they have at least 7 issues of this journal for that year. So in the 7th edition or 7th issue, this is not italicized in parentheses, and then you see the page number, and there's no use of the letter P or PP in this case, right? These are the pages. Another source that students, or another type of source that students often use is in the way of web pages, right? Internet sources, very similar, right? You have the author's last name, you have initials of the first and middle name. Same thing with the second author, and make sure you have the date of publication, right? You have the date of publication, and you have the title of the document itself, right? So the title of the web page, for example, and this is italicized, and you want to go ahead and include the URL, and you'll just say retrieve from, and then the web address or URL. This is just a little quirky note. There are a lot of little quirks with APA formatting for different types of sources, and it could get really exhaustive in the way of rules. But just one quick note here. This is if you're interviewing somebody from an agency, that communication, right? You're not going to include that communication in your reference list. Okay, so we treat that as a personal communication. Your interview, if you've interviewed somebody at an agency, no need to include it in the reference list, but you do want to quote that person or cite that person in the main body of the text. That's what I'm noting here in this section. Okay, and so the way to do that, according to APA, is to go ahead and put the name of that interviewee. Whoever you interviewed, go ahead and put that person's name here. You're going to call it a personal communication, right? That interview. You'll just call it a personal communication. And the date of that communication or interview, you'll include that in full in the main body. This is all in the main body of your text. If you have, those are just some basic rules in the way of formatting. If you have any additional questions, feel free to email me, or if you Google APA formatting or APA format, the very first thing that pops up is a website at Purdue University. So Purdue University does a very nice job of laying out some of the basic rules in very much detail. And so go ahead and check out their website. I provide the web address or the URL here. All right, so in the next section of this lecture, I'll go ahead and talk about the Dolgov framework that we're using to examine your selected policy topic.